This is Cherie Ray. I'm a consultant and coach. I teach my clients how to eliminate struggle from their lives. As a result, they discover solutions to previously perceived unsolvable problems and experience ease where struggle was the norm in their professional life and personal life. One of the simplest ways to reduce struggle is to improve your listening. In this two-part conversation, you will learn direct and productive ways to listen. What are you missing? Listening for connection, efficiency, and success. Do you find yourself having the same conversation with a parent, spouse, child, or coworker again and again? The problem could be a failure to listen, since development and change can only happen when listening is effective. Efficiency, connection, and a sense of ease and collaboration are all proven benefits of improved listening. In this two-part conversation, I hope you find valuable information that supports you in expanding your definition of listening. My main purpose in what I do is to eliminate struggle in people's lives. I think we have a whole lot of unnecessary struggle, and so listening is right underneath that, in the place of how much easier can communication be? How much more connected can conversation be? How much more efficient can conversation be? Everyone is hungry for human connection, especially now in these times. And so how can we have more meaningful connection? And listening is a big part of that. A great big part of that. So in your mind, how would you define listening today? Like, before we start to get a benchmark, how would you define listening?
Well, I mean, define listening. That's a good question. I don't know. I never thought of that really. I suppose it's like an action, in a way, because you're putting yourself in front of someone who's talking, and whether you're like looking at them or not makes a difference. And I think for me, I mean, if I can almost repeat back what they said or look at it from their point of view as they're talking, I can get a better sense of whether I'm listening or not. But that doesn't always happen, because it takes a little bit of attention to listen.
It does.
So,
And knowing, like, the nature of a human mind is to wander. To know that the nature of a human mind is to have outcomes and expectations and agendas and desires, and all those things that a human mind carries, that we can embrace the nature of a human mind and improve our listening.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big point. What's going on in my head, and am I assuming I'm listening, but I'm really not? Or am I already making up what they're going to say before they say it?
Right. So what's the purpose of listening? I mean, really, what's the purpose of listening if we were going to kind of look at it philosophically?
Well, to make things go easier, for sure. I mean, it's part of our reason for connection is listening. It's very important, because we don't feel connected if we're not listening to one another.
So true.
Yeah.
I think human beings have a desire for connection, real connection.
Yeah. And just to get one's needs met, essentially, just on a primary level of just living.
I think also in our culture, or it's kind of common, it's like people feel like their communication skills are in speaking and finding the right words, and saying it correctly and saying it in the right tone. And that's only 50% of the equation, because I might even just be 40% of the equation, because if you have cultivated an ability to listen, you will draw more from that person, draw out more from that person.
Mm.
You will hear, you will have more thorough, solid communication with that person, because you will hear and be willing to hear much more than just the words,
Mm.
which was going to be like that magnetic pull that brings two people together,
Mm-hmm.
which is,
I mean, it really involves a lot, all of your being to some degree, you know,
yes, yeah,
to,
exactly, exactly. So, um, so your interest in this topic is what? Why are you interested in this?
because I'd like to, really, I realize like in my own work, that I'm communicating with people all the time.
Mhm.
And, the thing that helps me to be different from other people in the same business or really in life in general is how really well I listen to people. And I can tell the difference when people feel really heard, then they love me. Like, you know, they connect.
Mhm.
And that just takes my business, you know, or the business of living, you know, to a whole different level. And I found from that also, it's so much more rewarding, you know, not to just go in, do the job, yes, ma'am, hello, goodbye, you know,
Mhm.
but to be kind of like, how are you? And really, when I ask that, like, how are you? I mean it like I'm a friend, you know,
Yes.
ask.
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful. Because what you're noticing is when you show up as a better listener, it really does kind of Teflon the interaction. Things go smoother. And we're going to talk about that at great length, about how listening can be contribute so much to efficiency.
Hmm.
And we'll talk about that. So that's great. That's great. So so just kind of think about, what is a successful conversation to you?
Hmm. Successful conversation. I think it's it's even if there's like a big problem that needs to be solved, you know, that two the people involved are, you know, they're feeling, both sides are feeling heard, you know, both sides are feeling, um, that they're, whatever they're saying matters, you know, to the other person, even if it's incorrect or off base or, you know, whatever it is that, so a successful communication, you know, to me is that the person really feels that I understand what they're saying,
Mhm.
even if I don't like it.
That's a really good point. I mean, that's a really good point, that you could see how needing to like what they say is going to impact your listening. If you're
Yeah,
on,
yeah, yeah.
could you see how you could contract your ability to listen if you're not hearing what you want to hear?
Yes, right. Definitely.
Hmm.
Definitely. And you know, in eye contact, body language, everything. Yeah, it can
That's
make
a
a big
really
difference.
good point. That's
Um, yeah.
great points. Great points. So, and when you're speaking to someone, like when you're wanting to share with someone, how does it feel for you when you feel like someone has really taken the time to listen to you? How does that feel inside you?
Oh, it's remarkable. You know, for me, I mean, you know, I don't think I grew up feeling heard, you know. And so um that it's almost like getting a hug.
Oh, what a great
it's that
example.
it's that nice.
That is that's a beautiful metaphor for a conversation where you feel like someone has really listened.
Yeah, it yeah, it's in the detail too, a little bit. Um, and now just the kind of what's behind, what people say as well, a little bit of that. Um, yeah, it's really reading, just being read, being heard, um, for someone to just take the time
Mm-hmm.
to listen to me blah blah
Mm-hmm.
for 5-10 minutes or whatever is
Mm-hmm.
huge. It's huge.
Well, I think also it taken that because sometimes people say, "Wait, I don't want to just sit and listen to somebody unload," you know. But the other part of it is like if somebody really is present and has a desire to understand what you're sharing, trying to understand you and what you're sharing,
Uh-huh.
and that's a listening activity. That's improved listening. If you're really listening to understand what they're saying and uh, to understand the person,
Uh-huh.
that brings that additional layer of, what you described as a hug.
Yeah. I mean, even if a person asks questions about what I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
even better, because then, you can kind of tell they're actually curious, actually interested, not
Yeah.
just
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're
I
actually,
love it when they ask questions in that place of like, um, then it really shows it that they have a desire to understand. And then I get a feeling that they really do understand because a lot of times people hear the words, but they take the words in, and there's more to be. They take the words in, and then they tend to interpret what those words mean via their personal definitions versus
yeah.
you know trying to understand from the sender what's going on.
Yep, yep, yep. I mean, and the way of doing that, I think, is for people to pretty much instantaneously already have it all figured out and your issue already figured out and already have the solution.
Yeah, and let's move on. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
which takes me to this next point. It's like listening is the magic ingredient to all human connecting.
Mm,
So I think it's undervalued, but it's really a magic ingredient to
mm,
all human connecting.
mm,
It's the other half of the Velcro
mm,
that makes that connection. So, an example that I like to use is, when you are with someone, I'll use this as like in some other setting, but basically when you sit down with someone and they're filling out a form and you're giving them the answers,
mhm.
and they're like, here they go filling out the form, name, address, the reason for the call, dot, 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 that's one level of listening that people feel like is really good because they've accurately completed the form.
Uh,
But there's no connection there. Can you feel how
Oh,
kind of sterile it is to just say it's
yeah,
accurate? You know, I got
yeah.
the name, the address, I got all the information. It's accurate. So it's like I have the facts, but there's no connection.
Okay. Yeah. It's sort of like giving directions or something. Yeah.
Right, right. But you're
Mhm.
taking in data about another person, but there's
Oh,
you're just filling out a form. So I think that's a
mm,
great way of as you explore listening better, it's a way of using that uh, analogy of filling out a form of going, okay, wait a minute, how much of myself am I bringing to the conversation?
okay.
And if I'm phoning it in or filling out a form, it's like, wait a minute, there's an opportunity here for me to up my game.
Okay.
You know,
Uh-huh.
that's I kind of put that as a benchmark, as like just a gut feel for people to have a place to measure their presence when
Mhm.
they're in conversation with someone.
That's good.
Because innocently, we believed if we could mirror back the facts or mirror back the words, and that's all great and wonderful, but
Mm.
there's that is you're kind of playing more of a role of a court reporter than you are from human to human connection.
Right. It's
And
a little
we,
more rote.
yep, yep, and we yearn for that human connection. So that's again another piece of ways we can see where human connection is available for us, but we separate ourselves from it innocently because we've had the idea that a good listener is going to mirror. A good listener is just going to get the facts. A good listener is going to be able to report. And all of that is wonderful, but the element of understanding a human being and connecting with a human being is taking it further,
Okay.
you know? And
Yeah.
in the whether it's um, in the workplace, it is incredibly helpful to be more present because in the workplace, well, it's all the same really. Whether you're in the workplace, in a family setting, in a romantic setting, in a social setting, in all of those settings, human beings tend to think they know who they're talking to. In the
Uh,
workplace, if it's someone that they're not particularly fond of, or if it's their supervisor, they tend to contract when they walk in the room. And anytime somebody contracts on the inside or feels insecure, they can't listen because now they have worry on their mind.
mm,
You see,
yeah.
so in any arena where you interact with other human beings, it's good to see that what I'll back it up. It's really good to see that you have a capacity to do more than mirror facts. That's the point I really wanted to make. Mirroring facts is great, but there's more. Okay.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so it's like, okay, so what is that more? And it's like your presence. Your human presence. Your human presence with a clear mind.
Mm.
And I'm
Ah,
going to talk yeah, I'm going to talk more about the impact of having a clear mind, but really being present to another human being is how we used to be when we were kids.
ah,
You know what I mean? When you see another kid on the playground, it's like you're just all in, you're in the conversation, you're present. Y'all are just, you're not worried about the outcome of the conversation. You're not, wrapped around the axle about their personality,
yeah.
what their title is on their
What
business
the
card.
teacher's personal life is. No.
Exactly.
There.
Exactly. So that's another way of like, okay, how can I just bring my human presence to this conversation and meet their human presence?
Mm, mm,
Because any
yeah.
interaction, business, social, romantic, friendship, whatever, addressing the United Nations, whatever it is, it's like if you can really get it in your head and heart that I'm here to connect with other human beings. What their place is in the world is meaningless because if you can make the human connection, that's the first domino that can make anything happen.
Mm,
And to
mm.
not be kind of destabilized by the Queen of England or the President of the United States or Jeff Bezos or whoever it is. It's like drop below that and connect with the human being and let all that other superficial stuff go.
Ah,
Change will happen, movement will happen, connection will happen if you connect knowing
mm.
you're connecting with human beings.
Yeah. So really what my mind thinks or the mind thinks, in just before you even have an interaction with someone, that's the point to say, wait, you know, don't judge this person because or put them on a pedestal or whatever because it makes me feel uncomfortable and then I'm not present.
Correct. Correct. And if we really know that all human beings on the planet, I believe this, all 7.5 billion people long for a feeling of connection to something. They yearn for connection. I believe that. I don't know. Maybe I'm sure there are people that say they don't, but I would think the majority of people yearn for connection. So if you go straight to knowing you're connecting with a human being that has an innate desire to connect, you've cut out a lot of static between you and your ability to listen.
Oh, yeah. I'm just reading a book about a woman who was sailing around the world alone, and she started to have a lot of anxiety, and she says that it's because she feels that it's because she hasn't had social interaction.
Interesting.
Yeah, she didn't expect it to be that hard not to have social interaction.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Which kind of supports that hypothesis that human beings desire connection.
Yeah.
Whether you are the highest of the highest socioeconomic to the whatever, there's to a native and an indigenous tribe, they're
Mm-hmm.
you can start there and you just eliminate a whole lot of fluff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and you'll see that like a fresh, real, connected conversation. If you'll notice too, like this week, when I give you some ideas and things to practice, when you have an intention of a real connected conversation, I want you to notice how that impacts you as the listener. As the listener, because that's going to be a place where you'll feel much more inspired. You'll feel much more alive. It'll be very energizing and invigorating to be in a real conversation as a listener. You're kind of.
I know when I left the Southwest, people seem to be much more easily, they would converse much more easily, strangers would converse much more easily than they do in New England. And I always felt this like, oh my God, like, what does it take just to say like hello or thank you or please, or I'd be like, oh, it felt like a lot of work here communicating when I came here.
Right. And it's like in one moment of your presence with a person, one moment of presence, eye contact, or just really a moment of connecting with a person, it doesn't take a lot of time. I want you to notice that this week too. It's like you can really just give someone your attention, neutral attention, and see them, and what that does for you. And we don't know what it does for them, but more times than not, it's gonna add to their day.
Yeah, it does.
And it's got to be neutral connection. Neutral.
Usually these days, especially.
Yes, good point.
Yeah,
really good point. So when talking about all connection with human beings, it's like being a better listener promotes and establishes goodwill between you and another person. And you mentioned that as you were talking about the in the workplace, how things seem to go easier when you listen. So when you show up and you really realize that a good listener is building goodwill with another person, and you consider, it's like, okay, so what does goodwill do? It's like, well, first of all, it having goodwill established between two people, both people relax. Both people are much more open and present to each other. They're just not on edge. So goodwill is an incredible thing. And I think goodwill is another piece where people tend to overlook the benefit of goodwill and how listening can contribute to goodwill. So goodwill is again, another magic ingredient to connecting with human beings,
Yeah, that's nice. Nicely put.
And so as goodwill gets established, then what happens is rapport comes to be. So in a business place, if a rapport is when you have a relaxed, comfortable interaction and have established a sense of connection. And a rapport is like, what's the vibe? What's the vibe of the conversation? And if
Yeah.
someone is, again, if someone is more relaxed and comfortable, you're going to have a more connected conversation.
Hmm.
Okay, so you've got
Yeah.
goodwill, you've got rapport. When those two things get in place, that's when collaboration happens.
Oh.
Effortless collaboration.
Hmm.
Because all of a sudden you've gone from in this conversation to where you've set the tone for collaboration, if nothing else.
Hmm.
Goodwill and rapport, you've set the tone for collaboration. And as that happens, I think especially in relationships where you tend to see people more than once, whether it's in an office setting, whether it's in a, a repeat client, like whether it's in friends or romantic relationships, it's like none of that has to be established again. If you're
Mm.
present, you are present to someone. You're have a desire for to you hold them in high esteem. Goodwill gets established, rapport gets established. Then all of that is established and doesn't have to be rebuilt every single time. So if you're in an office and your supervisor comes in, if you have rapport with that person, you don't have to reestablish rapport every single time.
Mm.
What happens from that point forward is the depth of the relationship increases.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
So, and that saves a lot of time that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, it's not like meeting a stranger every single time and building rapport. Like, if you meet a stranger, you see how you have to establish rapport with someone.
Yeah.
So efficiency goes up because all of a sudden you're in a place of goodwill with this person and you're willing to listen. Just carrying the energy of being willing to listen builds rapport.
Mm. Mm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, what happens too when you're willing to listen to someone, that they tend to share more. So, for instance, in a work situation, you're working on a project, and if you don't have good rapport and goodwill, people tend to not share information that could be helpful in getting the job done quicker, sooner, faster, more collaborative. But when you are willing to listen with a clear mind, then people tend to share more.
Hmm.
You get a bigger picture of the scope of work. You get a bigger picture of what they want from this assignment. And then that, like I said, that contributes to efficiency right there as well. Everything seems to
Mm.
just start, the wheels get greased through all of that, through rapport, through goodwill, through a willingness to be clear-minded and listen. Okay. So I thought it would be interesting too to go into more depth about what impacts your ability to listen. And they're very subtle, but they definitely impact your ability to listen. Okay? And we touched on this a little bit in the beginning. It's like when we go to a conversation, when we go to a conversation with a mindset that suggests we know the outcome of the conversation.
Yeah. Of
Okay.
course. Know
Okay.
everything.
Right. Right. And because this person has been this way for 4 times, we think if they're of course they're going to show up the fifth time and be that way. And they've been difficult conversations, so of course you're going to assume that this is a difficult person and this will be a difficult conversation. Well,
Hmm.
what you're not seeing is that you're setting the stage,
Yeah.
inviting a difficult conversation to come in.
Yeah.
If you can, again, practice before you go into any conversation and clear your mind, kind of just do a gut check. On a scale of 1 to 10, how neutral am I going into this conversation and how clear minded am I?
Yeah.
And you'll get your own information on that one, just checking in. So you'll see that if you have judgments about the conversation or the person that limits your ability to listen. If you have expectations on the outcome of the conversation, that's
Mhm.
going to limit your ability to listen.
Mhm.
And are you going into this conversation having an agenda?
Mhm.
Now, that sounds great to a lot of people. It's like, well, I've got to get this job done. It's like, yep, that's not without question. You've got to get the ball moved down the field on some project. But you know that. That's the direction you're pointing. But do you have more of an agenda than that? Do they need to like you? Do they need to show up a certain way? Do they need to have on, blue slacks? I mean, what you see what I mean? You just want to check all that going, do I have an agenda? Do I
Yeah.
need them? Am I trying to win them over?
Yeah.
You know, do I
Yeah.
need them to like me so I can feel better?
Yeah.
No, you don't need any of that. But that you can see, you can just check to see if there are limitless numbers of agendas, but you can do a check in and see if you have an agenda. How clean are your hands going into that conversation?
Yeah.
Am I there to make them wrong? You know what I mean? It's like that's another piece. Am I there to make them wrong and have them admit to me they're wrong? That would be an agenda.
Oh no, never.
Never. All right. So here's another piece. Like we talked about, like we were talking about how human beings yearn for connection. It's good to do a check on yourself to see, am I reactive to this person before I go into the conversation?
Ah. Mhm.
You know, am I reactive to this? It's like, I've heard people say, well, I didn't like him from the get go because they reminded me of my third ex husband. And it's like, wait a minute, they're how reactive are they to this person? How reactive are they to how this other person comes off in the world? Check your reactivity. Check your reactivity because they're just another human being on the planet.
Ah.
So it's neutral. They're just another human being on the planet. And if you're not neutral, you're reactive to that person. So just how can I dial it back and just again be present to that person, and am I feeling reactive?
Okay, that's a good one.
But what is that ping inside you?
Wow, all of this just brings up how many crazy, kind of thoughts I have about people. You know, just before I even meet them. For that matter. Just I don't know, for many millions of reasons,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what's
and
so
how that
innocent?
can influence me in my ability to be present.
Exactly. And how innocent it is. None of it's intentional. Once we become aware of it, it's so unintentional. Once we become aware of it, it's like, oh my gosh, I see I see what could impede my ability to be present and listen, but it's completely innocent. But that's why
Yeah.
we get the opportunity to wake up to it. It's like, wait a minute. The other part of this conversation about listening is, what are you missing?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Right, which is uh, taking listening to a higher level. So it's like, are you listening for what you want to hear, or are you listening to what they're trying to share? And that comes up a lot.
Both.
Uh, yeah. But it comes up a lot, especially as I mean, romantic relationships are a great example where especially if you are really leaning in toward this person, and we don't hear a lot at that early stage of romantic connection because we just really want to hear what we want to hear.
Yeah.
And we're not really sure what they're saying, but we really want to hear what we want to hear. Yeah, yeah, it's a good one to check.
Uh,
So just in that place of what you've heard so far, kind of just reflecting on what you've heard so far,
mhm.
how do you feel like you would want to uh, go into your next conversation? Just to, because you're going to have a week to practice. So it's like, how do you feel like if any of this information, uh, I'm not asking if it's helpful or
Uh,
not helpful. I'm just asking is like, do you feel like you had some shifting on the inside about listening? So when you do consciously connect with people, do you feel like
yeah.
the lens is a little cleaner?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think, I could just be asking myself, are you listening? I mean, I could just be asking myself that every once in a while, in terms of, um, and I can even ask them, am I hearing you right? Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to, because I'm sure there's interference in in me
Mm-hmm.
somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I think it's a really easy thing to do. That I remember in the educational system, I always thought this was a handy tip that educators would share something with a group of students, and then it occurred to them to check for understanding. And it's like, okay, what did y'all just hear me? What did
uh,
y'all just hear me try to share? And it's interesting
yeah,
just to kind of play that game about let me just check for understanding because you don't want to assume they got
yeah.
it. You don't want to assume you got it, but you can always check for understanding.
Yeah. I mean, like when I say I'll be there between 3 and 4, and then they'll call me at 5 after 3 and say, "Where are you?" And
Exactly.
because they will have heard the 3 and not the 3 between 3 and 4. And that happens
Exactly.
all the time.
Exactly. And that what that does is it's like, do you see that as another factor that contributes to efficiency, goodwill, and rapport?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people go, I don't have that kind of time. It's like, well, that took less than probably 5 seconds to, check for understanding about the window and not a specific time.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. So what I rephrase that to, I will arrive between da 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 da, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but it's still, no.
Yeah. And see, and even in that listening, it's like even in the listening of say what a particular client is sharing, if you listen for more than just the words, there's more chance than not that they're going to share more information about why it's important that this happens or that happens.
Mm.
And then that you take that into consideration when you're shifting or changing or whatever needs to happen around that, but you really have a greater understanding about why it's important to the person.
Yeah, I think just asking little questions, after talking sometimes, just,
Mm-hmm.
um, do you have any other questions? Did you hear, did you, yeah, just checking in to see if they were listening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And were you listening?
Yeah. And was I listening? Yeah. And was I
Exactly.
listening?
See,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think even with listening, how have you ever read a book, where you're sitting down reading the book and your eyes are following the lines, but
Uh-huh.
you've turned the page 3 or 4 times and you're like, you wake up to the fact that your physicality was engaged, but you can't remember what you read in the last page and a half.
Yeah.
We do the same thing in conversation. We
Right.
do the exact same thing in conversation. So it's innocent that
Oh,
we've missed it
uh-huh.
because our mind wanders. Can't help it. We just bring it back to presence. But that's another great thing to see how innocent it is, but how we could have easily missed details that could be helpful.
I find that like I don't know if it's been a stage that I've had to go through. I'm not sure. I don't think I have it as much now as I used to, but just being attentive, like looking into your eyes while you're talking, can sometimes distract my listening ability. I don't know how to explain it, but maybe it's because sometimes I feel almost too intimate in a sense, and like I have to get
Oh,
comfortable with that,
uh-huh,
you know, with that
uh-huh.
attention, because it's unusual to talk with someone and really look at them and them really look at you as well. And I think that takes a little for me to just kind of absorb that, that
That level of presence.
yeah, that level of presence. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we don't
Yeah.
get a lot of it,
No.
and nor do we tend to not give a lot of it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
but that really is a factor that will bring you leverage far above other people in the world doing what you do, and you as an individual, what you bring to relationships, what you bring to the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
real point of leverage that gets discounted a lot because just like you said, it feels uncomfortable. People make up it takes too much time to be present. People make up it's dot 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 uncomfortable, whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point, when in my working career, which is like 22 years and what I've been doing, I went from just doing the job to finally saying, okay, well, what is this really, why do I keep doing this? And what am I getting out of it? Like, what can I get out of it that I'm not getting out of it? And I think it had to do with my relationships with customers,
Mm-hmm.
and it had to do with like connecting with people. And when I started to realize that, it made everything so much more rewarding. It makes what I do over and over and over again, that's completely boring to me, become interesting and become worthwhile and become meaningful for that reason alone.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Yep.
um,
Absolutely. That's what keeps it fresh. When I
yeah.
talked in the beginning about how it can feel alive and inspiring, collaborative, creative, it's bringing that very vital piece to the conversation. Bringing it to anything you're doing is bringing your presence there.
Yeah. Just showing you care minutely somehow.
Mm-hmm. Well, you care about the work,
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
involved with the work. Your energy is going to
Right.
go into the work,
Right.
whatever the work is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You
people
know,
love to make contribution.
right. They do.
Mm-hmm.
They do.
Yes, and I say if the fact that you've done it for 22 years, that's a great level of success. So, A, you're doing something right, and B, the fact that it feels that you start to see how it could feel fresh, how it could feel more connected.
Yeah.
It
Well, nobody's ever said that to me. So I appreciate that. I could tell you.
Oh, you're very
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you.
The facts speak for themselves.
Mm, mm.
You've been in business 22 years.
That's true. It's amazing. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So here's another piece too about being curious when you come into conversation. Really cultivating a curious, neutral mind.
Mm,
Okay?
yeah.
Curious. Curious. To me, curiosity did not kill the cat. Curiosity is what, gosh, fed the cat. So curiosity, I mean, I want you to, you can really cultivate a like, even in the business of someone calls you and wants you to come out to do some piece of business. If you're curious, you don't know that if you can be curious and not just assume they want what they said, you're curious about that, the door opens. There could be a tremendous line of business besides what they called you out to do.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whether it's in business, like I said, friendship, whatever. It's like if you could just be more curious, and being curious automatically takes you out of a place of judgment and expectation.
Mm, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that it really is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you can relax because anything you don't know that you need to know, you can ask.
Yeah.
So in that place of being curious, it's also another way of listening is to kind of lean in and listen to what matters to them about what they're sharing. So it's more than just hearing the words, more
Okay.
than going to the dictionary to look up the words that they used, but a deeper level of connection is listening for what's the feeling behind what they're saying.
Yeah.
Where are they bringing their energy to the topic?
Right.
Now, and why does it matter to them? I think it's another piece about really you have the opportunity to take it easy and just learn, why does it matter to them? Why does it matter to them to have this job done?
Oh, okay. Hmm.
Why does it matter, you know, like I said, even in a personal relationship, just leaning in to hear what they're sharing with you and why does it matter to them? That's going to give you a window of who this person is, not who you think they are, but you could learn some really relevant new information about that person. Going, I never knew that mattered to them.
Yeah, I never thought about it.
But you can be curious and just listen for why it matters. Listen why it
Yeah.
matters.
Or what matters.
What
Yeah.
matters and why it matters to them. Because why it
Yeah.
matters to us, it may not matter to us. We may be wondering, why are they even bothering me with this? Okay,
That often
that often happens. But you can let that one go by, and then just lean in to say, well, I wonder why it matters to them. What do they make of this? And some question will come to mind. Some piece of wanting to understand more will come to mind, and here you go, the connection richens.
Hmm.
We don't know we don't know what people make up about things in their head. So it's not about vocabulary and choosing the right words. We just don't know what they make up about it inside their own head.
Mm-hmm. Mm-mm. And sometimes it's a surprise.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's a total surprise.
Yeah,
It's
because
like
we're all different,
if we can be more curious about it, we're going to get surprised more than be affirmed.
Yeah.
We're going to be surprised way more than we are going to be affirmed. You're going to go, oh, 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 wrong. I was wrong about that one. So, and as you're in that desire to be curious and listen to the feeling behind what they're sharing, I invite you to not interpret, not just like lean in and say, God, it sounds like this and this and this and this and this and this, and just assume you know what it is. Don't interpret.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Okay.
Because we're basically taking their information and running it through my mind,
Uh-huh.
and I'm not getting to know anything new about them.
Yeah. Right.
I'm taking and matching it to what I hold to be true, and I'm taking their information and trying to match it to what I believe, and it's like, that doesn't do anything. That doesn't bring connection. You want to get to know them better. You want to understand more about their side of the street.
Yeah.
That's a
Okay.
whole lot of listening. A lot of listening is like, I want to see what it looks like from their side of the street.
Hmm.
You know, if it's somebody you want to date, you know, and they're this or that, it's like you're not getting the answers you want or whatever it might be, or you really want to get to know somebody better. You just have the opportunity to learn what life looks like from their side of the street.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really a whole lot easier when you just take your agenda out of it. If
Exactly.
there's an agenda, if there's any agenda, you take, and then, you know, the person feels a whole lot more comfortable usually. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, there's no expectation, and then the freedom to communicate is much easier.
Right. And in that situation, you
It's
see
not
too.
attached to anything.
Exactly. And see how in that particular example we're just talking about, people would be freer with information if they're more comfortable with you.
Yeah,
And
right,
we're and you know, romantic relationships are a place where people feel the most insecure sometimes.
right. There's because there is so much other stuff that comes into it. Gosh.
That's just not helpful when you're just trying to get to know somebody. You could just listen and ask questions and get to know them and let all that other
Yeah.
stuff go by.
Yeah.
Okay. Super, super. So don't interpret. Don't interpret. You can always, the gift of being in conversation is you can ask the person directly for clarification.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, gosh, tell me more about that because I know what I make up about that, but what does it look like to you?
Yeah. How do you make that up?
I know, everything is made up. So it's like, so, but let me see what you make up about that. If we really see that it's all made up anyway, you know, I can ask them how they're making it up.
What chapter in your book of fiction are you on?
Exactly, exactly. Because God, I drank the Kool-Aid that mine was nonfiction. So
It's not fiction.
exactly. So what another thing that happens is when we listen with a clear mind, you know, when we listen without an agenda, when we listen with even a mind that's more quiet and curious, what happens is there's space in the conversation for people to hear themselves, you know, to kind of hear their own words, hear their own wisdom. And a lot of times that's an invitation for them to just kind of reflect and hear what they said. And they may come back and say, wait a minute, I didn't come out at all like I meant for it to say, because they rarely get the opportunity to kind of just hear their own words in the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then more of what they want to share comes forward. More of their a deeper wisdom could come forward from what they want to share.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully you're getting a taste of how much easier conversation can be
Mm-hmm.
by improving your listening.
Mm.
If you knew that in a conversation all you had to bring to the conversation was better quality listening, and be curious, how much easier and less stressful and more relaxed would conversation be?
Yeah, a whole lot more.
Which
Plus,
defaults, which, oh, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. Just a lot more rewarding.
Totally. And it defaults to more presence. You know,
Defaults to.
you're not needing it. Your mind's not suggesting you need to tap dance, be different, know more, um, uh, you know, carry some facade into the conversations. Like, what are people hungry for? Real people to show up and be real and lean back and listen. Just be curious and listen. Be curious and listen. And that just to me looks so simple. I didn't know
Well,
that for a long time, but now it looks so
mm,
simple.
just sit back and listen. I mean, yeah, what a concept. Yeah. And just sit back and listen. I think a lot of times I think there's an expectation of me too, and so I'm going on that expectation. Like I feel like something's expected of me. So I have to be, alert to that. And then I'm not listening as well, because all I have to do is listen.
Exactly.
So
And it's interesting to kind of see where that expectation came from.
yeah.
I would say that was in your book of fiction to
I'd
point
say it
to
was in my
your
book of,
reference a while
yeah,
ago.
it's it's the last chapters. Those are all the next chapters for the next book. Here's
Uh-huh.
the
And the big
list.
book of fiction, I need to be
Here's
more than I am. I need to know more than I know. I need to
Yeah.
anticipate what they're going to want. I
Oh
need to,
yeah.
need to. And it's like, whoa, that is another perfect way of describing an agenda.
Yeah.
And
Well, coming out of a place where I felt like I had to be really perfect at everything. You know, that's that's I'm sure where all the expectations came from there.
innocently, absolutely innocently, but
Yeah.
they'll get in the way of listening.
Gets in the way of everything. Yeah.
Well, truly. I'll tell you that those books of fiction cause complications where things could be much simpler
Uh,
innocently and
yeah.
completely innocently until we
Mhm.
wake up to the book of fiction, and then it's like, man, I'm tired of carrying this book of fiction.
Yeah.
You know.
And often it has to do with like in my mind time, and when I take that off the table, I everything happens much quicker anyway. It's just
That's a that's isn't that a fascinating point?
yeah,
That if you take off your mind that you don't have time for this,
yeah,
you see that you do.
right. It
And if
all
you
worked out.
it all works out. And if you don't have time, you just schedule it for another time.
Mm. Which I was what I was just doing before I came on to this, was just trying to be present to this person who needed me to help fix something, at the same time knowing I needed to leave at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I gave him all the reassurances that I possibly could, that I was going to come back and, finish. And he trusted that, so at least I got that across, instead of just kind of like being, I'm sorry, I just can't do this, you got to get somebody else to do this or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And working off all that head chatter about I don't have time for this and this, I'm overwhelmed and I've got too much on my mind. I've got too much to do. It's like
Right.
just what occurred to you is like what you just explained was such a beautiful example of the rapport you have with this person,
Hmm.
and you
Hmm.
communicated wonderfully.
Yeah, I mean, I think not getting anxious about feeling like you don't have time helps a lot. It's like I just know I have this amount of time and I have to stop at such and such a time. So for me, if I set that boundary, I'm within my own, safety zone, but I can also be calm and also help talk to the person, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I think it helps you be more gracious because we do have schedules, But once you
yeah.
have rapport and goodwill established, you can
Hmm.
easily and calmly say,
Hmm.
I got to go now, and then
Hmm.
it's that they completely understand.
Yeah.
Can't
Yeah,
can't.
it's really brilliant how, just the fact that you can get to the rapport part of, what you're talking about, and that it's can stay
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
after that, which is really great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, any other questions or anything?
No, it's great. amount of information. Yeah, I mean, I'm really look forward to practicing.
Do, do. I invite you to practice, and I also invite you to practice this, practice some of these things on conversations that you don't feel so solid in, like some conversations where we feel a little uncomfortable or not so secure, and that's where you'll gain a lot of ground if you practice
Mm,
it in the places where you feel the least comfortable, because it's going to rewrite that boundary of
mm,
comfortable uncomfortable. You're going to get bigger space to be, even
mm,
if you just pick one of these things and go into an uncomfortable conversation, or maybe a conversation where you don't feel confident,
mhm,
and it's maybe even on a fresh topic, like these things we do in life that we do them for the first time, and
mhm.
it's like, wow, if I took one of these and I'm going to be engaging with people, if I just pick one of them, bring even my presence to this conversation, take that for a test drive.
Well, just one of these. You're saying one.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm saying, please use them all over the week. But
Yeah.
even if it feels like the bar is kind of high on an uncomfortable situation,
Oh,
just pick one. Will bring you leverage to
okay.
making an uncomfortable situation more comfortable.
Okay.
You see what I mean? Just even
Yeah.
practicing. A lot of times people steer away from practicing something that they're not comfortable with.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, well, how do we get comfortable? It's like, well, you got to engage with it. You don't need to wait until you're comfortable to engage with it. It's like, no, that's an opportunity and an invitation to engage with what I'm not comfortable with. And what's more likely to happen than not? You're going to get comfortable with it.
Right.
So it's like, not avoiding uncomfortable
Huh.
situations or not trying to rearrange them so you never have to have an uncomfortable conversation. It's like, no, I could use these in uncomfortable conversations and shift my relationship with
Uh-huh.
uncomfortable conversations, or
Huh.
conversations where I just don't feel confident.
Okay. Yeah. Good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
all the game of life is like, gosh, how can we hold it more as a game?
Hmm.
I love that idea. What if we just saw it
Hmm.
more as a game?
Yeah, that's a nice idea.
It is. It is. It
It
is.
is a game.
It is a game. It is a game. In the book of nonfiction, it is a
It
game.
is
In the book
a-
of fiction, it gets kind of complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I would think if we were going to like wind it down to some points about, okay,
Mhm.
listening. It's like listen with a clear mind,
Yeah.
be curious,
Yeah.
lean in to understand more how they see things from their side of the street,
Yeah.
and you're going to feel more connected. Very best things about listening is checking to see if you have an agenda for the person who's doing the listening. Okay.
Right.
So it's like, well, what does that mean? And it's like, and then it's like, say we'll use a work situation. So in the work situation, we have an agenda, like,
Hmm.
okay, I have to communicate a responsibility that I'm delegating to you, and I need to share this information. I need to share deadlines on this information, and I need to check to see if you understand if what's been effectively communicated. Okay, that sounds simple enough, and it is simple enough. What gets complicated is when we need to communicate with people that we have a lot of opinions and judgments on.
Which is
Okay,
usually the case with everybody, right?
absolutely, absolutely. But that's the leverage point where you can see where you're what takes you, what impairs your listening is your own opinion about these people, your own assessments, your own expectations, your own judgments. All of this, I always call it like all of this meanness in the conversation. There's a whole lot of me, not mean, but me. There's a whole
Me.
lot of me
Mhm.
in this conversation. And then that's a practice you can do about really checking, like checking your coat at the closet before you go into the room. It's like everything I think about this person is irrelevant in what I'm here to do. If I think they can do the job, if I think they're listening to me, if I think they're receptive to me, if I think they are the wrong person for the job, all of that has to be checked at the door in order for you to really listen to the nuances of what they're sharing back, so you can really see for yourself and explore the conversation in real time with a person that's present, and not kind of be macheteing through all of the self-talk you have about what you're there to do with that person. What we wanted to do was start with a review of from last week to kind of get everybody up to speed. And the place that I wanted you to really check in is that for effective communication, really connected, I'll say connected communication and effective communication is you're 50% of the equation. So what does it take to be a good listener? What does it take? And as we explored in the first section, it's like we have to really, really not have an agenda when we get in the conversation. And we were just talking about this in a work situation, how when you have responsibilities to delegate, when you have responsibilities to receive, it's like, how can I be a better listener in those situations? And when I say come to the conversation clear and clean, it means how can you put aside your personal assessments, expectations, judgments, assumptions, personality differences, your likes, your dislikes. When I say judgments, it's like that this person is good for the job, not good for the job. They shouldn't have been promoted. They could be promoted. Like, you think about all of that extra minutia that comes into the conversation before you ever sit down in front of the person, before you ever get in front of a video conversation with the person, before you ever get on a call with a person. So in order to bring a higher quality conversation to life, that stuff that wants to crowd in at the table has got to be put to the side. Put to the side and really keep your attention on what you're there to do. What you're there to do, because you will be able to listen to the nuances of the conversation. You're going to be able to listen to your own wisdom that will occur to you during the conversation. You'll be able to really be more connected to the person and get a sense of if they're understanding, if they're not understanding. You even have space to check with them, check for understanding. What did they hear in all that? Do they understand the deadlines? Do they understand the policies, procedures, how the process is going to go? And all of that can happen much more efficiently when you're not dialoguing with yourself while you're trying to have a dialogue with someone else. So that brings a clear mind, it brings a present mind, and it brings a receptive mind to the conversation. And you're not arguing with yourself or the mind tends to want to be validated. It wants to validate that this person's impossible. It wants to validate that this person's not listening. The mind really loves to have all of your expectations, judgments, assessments about this person validated. And that impairs your listening. So starting from there, I'd like to hear if you have any thoughts on just that one point about how can you come to a conversation cleaner. I don't know if you had any practice from last week or even what was on your mind from hearing that for the first time.
Well, yes, I did have experiences right away out of the box. When I got some fuzzy directions to get somewhere and was starting to create this whole analysis of this person and and in my head, and how unhappy I was with them, and I saw it and I was like, oh my God, that's just what Cherie was talking about.
That's really great.
Yeah,
I mean, because you saw the mechanism kick in, you
I
know.
did.
Now, awareness is such a, I mean, awareness is what germinates the seed of better listening, just being aware of like, whoa, I could have gone so far down that road and not even known I was on a road, that I was on I'd send myself on a trip and I wouldn't even know it.
And
That's,
then when I met her, it was like she was fine, and I realized none of that mattered, but I could have continued it, had I wanted to fuel it. And I may have a little bit, I don't know, but I think I just realized that I was just more aware of it than anything. Yeah. And I had another incident that resulted in I was that same day was installing some blinds, or trying to fix a blind for a really high end customer, like really, really high end. And I was doing as best a job as I could, and he was in the room, and he knew I was doing the best a job I could. And when he talked to me, I would just stop what I was doing and just turn and just look and listen, instead of like just keep going and be half attentive. And by the end of the job, he has 6 blinds, power blinds, that he doesn't like, that he purchased from someone else. And he said to me, I really like the blinds that you put in my office. They're so much easier to use. Why don't you give me a quote to replace these? So, and I really do believe that it was because I was just really completely attentive to him,
I do too. I
Yeah.
do too. You know how we talked in that first section, how people are so unfamiliar with someone coming to a conversation and giving them their presence. The difference between, like in the first section about being with someone and filling out a form, and being, like you said, attentive and present to that person.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's such an example of how opportunity is. There's all kind of opportunity when we make connection with another person. Yours happened to be in relation to making a sale, and it's great for business, but it didn't cost you anything to bring your presence to the conversation.
Mm-mm. No.
That is a great example. Both of those are really good examples.
I still, though, I'm not sure about your question, in terms of how to put that stuff aside,
Uh-huh.
So that's
Excellent.
it's a good question.
That is a great
Actually,
question.
Cherie, I was just going to ask the same question, because it's like, okay, I understand the concept, but how about the application? How do I go about doing that?
Perfect. So I'm gonna spell it out. So it's like, what we put our attention on is what we breathe life into. Okay, so it's like, here we have all this churning, the neighbor's barking dog, or whatever you want to call it, going on. Now, there's a fork in the road at that moment where you can put your attention on the person you're connecting with. You can bring more of your attention to that person, which is exactly what you did. You turned and you put your attention on that person versus just continuing on. Say, doing the installation. I'm using that just as an example. I don't know how it played out, but
And I was on a ladder.
yes, exactly. Exactly. So you're on a ladder, putting on the installation. And when you stop and really give your presence to the human being you're in front of, there's a fine line between putting your presence to the human being you're connecting with and keeping part of your attention on how impossible they are, how they don't ever listen. You know, you see, it's like, I really need to finish this install. I don't have time to really do this. All the while you're missing opportunity. You're missing an opportunity to connect. You're missing so much just by being so oriented to what your mind is offering during that interaction.
Yeah.
You can direct your attention to the human being. And it's practice. There's no perfection in this. And every time you do it, it gets easier. And on the days that you can't, you did the best you could. You know?
Yeah.
But we have free will. We have capacities that if we really want to have more connected conversations, we can do it. It can happen because by putting your attention on, like, I want easier, more effective conversations, because it looks to me like there's opportunities here if I just bring more of myself to the conversation. Then your creative process will start to kick in because that is a topic that matters to you.
It's also a relief.
How was it a relief for you?
Yeah, because I'm not really that concerned about myself or what I'm going to say or what to do, or like, it's like I'm not as self-conscious as I'm more present to that person. So that frees me up.
It certainly
it's
does.
less work in many respects.
It is less work because that's such a key point too. It's like, wait a minute, when I have less of me and my agenda on my mind, me having a whole lot of me on my mind while you're trying to connect with someone is the equivalent to having an agenda.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, if it's all about you in a conversation, that's an agenda. Like, I need to get this done. These people are bothering me. I've got that. If there's a whole lot of that in that, and what's churning over here is like, the conversation is not about connecting with another person. The conversation that's going on is you and how it's all about you. It kind of sounds blunt and direct, but it's like, wait a minute, I want to listen, because just to your point, it's so much easier to connect with someone when you don't have a lot of you on your mind. A whole lot of you on your mind is another way of saying all that personalization about the person, the judgments, the expectations, the personality level stuff that we either make up. We make it up if we don't know this person. And then we make up more stuff if we have history with this person. We make up more stuff that their personality is fixed and their whatever I make. What was that?
We can confirm it.
Oh, that's it. That's it. I told you that they were ... whatever it might be. Whatever it might be. But I love that you saw how much easier it was and less energy drain to give your attention to the person. You can see that if you stayed out of all the personalization ahead of time, thinking you need to have a script and know what you're going to say and follow that script, or I need to anticipate what might go down in this conversation because I've heard this person's impossible, or how much of that dust can you see gets kicked up ahead of time? And what you saw was so key, where you saw the moment when it started to kick up. So basically, if you don't shift away from that, you kind of think you have to cut through all that to have the conversation. Where it's like, well, no, if I just get present,
it's a whole new moment.
it's a whole new moment, and it's a whole new person you're in front of. The person's not new, to be quite honest, the person is not new, but you're seeing them with unobstructed vision.
Mm.
And then at that point, the conversation is alive, lively. It's real conversation. This person is your response. It's a responsiveness in the moment to what's really happening, not to the stories we are carrying about what's going to happen, could happen, should happen.
Mm-hmm. As much as I would like it to be about me,
I know. Wouldn't it? All of us do, yeah.
But it's also easier to respond, in a more efficient way, I think, like to their satisfaction, essentially, because they feel, heard, even if you don't agree, I guess. So,
but see, I love that too, because it's like, if they feel heard, you're starting to build rapport, like we talked about. Mm-hmm. And then you're also establishing goodwill toward another person. Mm. And that's where the efficiency comes in, because they're much more relaxed, because all of their insecurity bells and whistles aren't going off, because they don't know you, they don't trust you, they don't know who you are from blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And all of that rapport and all that connection happens when you give someone your presence.
Yeah. It's like the mind is either on the defense or it's on the attack, one or the other. It's like it's either, oh, I got to be prepared for this, or I got to get something from this. Mm-hmm. Those two things happen a lot.
They do.
In my mind.
They do. And you see it happening. And that's what this conversation is about, is just becoming aware to what's invisible to us in conversation. Again, there's no perfection, but there's that we can become aware of these very invisible factors that we think it's either about the person, we think it's about life, we think it's, I don't know about you guys, but I think I'm very reasonable. I kind of think that's so funny. It's like people don't tend to have any problem with themselves. They tend to have problems with others, They either don't feel like they're understood. They don't feel like people get them, We picture ourselves as being so easy to get along with.
That's me, Cherie.
Because it looks, our way of usness is so familiar. Right. Our usness is so familiar. We just... We don't understand that people are the center of their universe. I'm the center of my universe. My universe has a flow to it. Their universe has a flow to it. And all of our individual idiosyncrasies and, whatever, it's like they're unique to us, but we tend to think everybody is operating from that established point, because it's so much the water we swim in within ourselves. We can't imagine how somebody doesn't see it how we see it. But their whole book of life experience is completely different than mine.
Completely.
But see, you don't even have to be concerned with their book of experience if you come to the table clean. Come to the conversation clean. Share what you want to share. Have a desire to connect, not to be validated. not to be right, because in that in the place of listening, it's like how they are seeing the conversation, it looks right to them. How I'm seeing the conversation looks right to me. So if we can connect a whole lot of that stuff, there's spaciousness to um, have rapport, goodwill, and deepen the conversation. And I love the idea of holding it all loosely, knowing that there's no perfection. Like, oh, okay, let me back up and try again. Let me back up and try again. It's like we're going into a conversation. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Let me back up and try again. Let me schedule it for another time. That tends to happen more in personal relationships where there's the emotional component tends to take off like a rocket in conversation. So that's a place of I think it's another place on the emotional plane when we find we can't listen. When we've gotten really emotionally triggered and my ability to listen is off the table.
That's a huge one.
That I didn't think about that till right now, but it's like that, and knowing that, you know what, I be completely transparent. I'm at a place where I can't listen. I need to take a break. Maybe we'll reschedule this. But knowing that when you can't listen, it's cross the line to an unproductive conversation. It's just not productive.
I think the emotional part and the connection that you had said last week about engage in uncomfortable can allow yourself to be uncomfortable, essentially. And
Yes.
With myself, maybe more so than even them.
Oh, it's all within. Your discomfort is inside you.
It's inside me. Yeah.
Can you elaborate on this point, please, Cherie? The one about the discomfort within you.
Yes.
This last point.
Yes. We talked about how, say, it's a conversation on a topic that I have a lot of thinking about. That's another way of saying a conversation where I feel insecure.
Mm.
Where I'm feeling not so grounded and centered. Like, it can be in the workplace, it can be in your personal relationships, but you just don't really know how to go into the conversation, but you want to have a productive conversation. So, first of all, it's like when you feel inside yourself, you're getting really uncomfortable. And for me, it always used to it. I'm not as reactive to the discomfort, but used to it feel like I'm sitting on pins and needles, and I just want to bolt. I want to go to where the closest exit sign is and get out of here. Or I want to come back swinging. and our really, and it's like this where I really got onto myself was when I really had to prove my point. You need to hear what I'm saying. You don't understand what I'm saying. It's like, let me back up and come at it again. So I got onto it's like when I'm feeling like I got to come out and prove something, get you to hear me, convince you, get you to agree with me, get you to validate what I'm saying, anything like that is a place where the conversation is probably no longer productive. Now, you can practice when that uncomfortable feeling starts to come. You can be aware. It's like, oh, this is usually where I shut down and I want to bolt or start convincing or something, you know what I mean? Whatever your behavior is. And so what can happen is as you feel that uncomfortableness, you don't have to be reactive to it. You can notice the discomfort and really practice how can I stay present and keep my ears open while I'm feeling this discomfort? Because no one's in harm's way. We used to think we were in harm's way or we had to have a big reaction. For me, it happened once, like in a repetitive conversation where, you get to a certain point and you're having the same conversation again and again and again. It might be over days, weeks, months, or decades. You can get to the same point in the conversation. And for me, it was one of those over decades going. And intuitively or intuition or inner wisdom or a desire to have more connected conversations, it occurred to me like it was just getting to that point and I was ready to be reactive to the conversation. And it occurred to me right then, it was like, just sit on your hands and lean in and try to just listen. And it was almost like, it sounds very drama queenish, but it was almost like electrical current was running through my body. And I'm just like turbulence on an airplane. It's like, just write it out. And what was so pivotal is when I wrote it out over that peak of discomfort, my system kind of calmed down and I didn't have words, but it felt very different to just be present and even to just say at that moment going, you know what? I still want to revisit this conversation. I just don't have words right now. But I didn't react to the discomfort. And that put me on a learning curve to be able to stay present when I feel the insecurity so strongly. And however your creative process works for you, something will occur to you. I'm not saying what occurred to me is an application, but the invitation is to be less reactive when you find you can't listen. Most often, too, in a workplace, if you're really wanting to advance yourself in a leadership position, that's one of the key things that you have to cultivate within yourself is staying present and at best neutral as a situation plays out. That's what really is a dividing rod between leaders and people who are not leaders. Where they can stay present in the midst of chaos. They can stay present in the midst and still lead people through those uncomfortable situations.
But part of that, wouldn't that be also how you express yourself and you communicate to others, not just only how you hear others? So when you're saying that in the middle of a chaos, leadership stands out from non-leaders by the way they carry people through a chaotic or an uncomfortable situation or crisis or whatever it may be. But isn't that also part of that would also be how you relay your thoughts or plans or to others, not just how you think about it and how you take others on. It's also about how you convey yourself to others.
Absolutely, but if you're cultivating a clearer mind, you're going to be responsive to the situation in the moment.
See, and this is something I always struggle with is oftentimes when I'm in a crisis, I don't have the right response. And that's why I tend to just shut down or be quiet, like you said, not respond. Mm-hmm. But then when I try to revisit, it's like too late for me or for the other person or people. This is already past. So there's no point in bringing back something from the past. So I get caught in this problem.
Well, this is a place where, like I said, where you get on a learning curve. It's not immediate where the switch flips, but you can get on the learning curve. And there's really nothing that says, I had a chance to think about what we just said. Can I revisit that with you? If we don't hold ourselves to like a superhuman level, like I should get it right every single time, like whatever that right might be. But you can step away, get reflective, and come back in. That doesn't mean anything about you. It really does mean you're human, and that in a place of being reflective, you're really looking for the highest quality solution for everybody. How does that land inside you?
I have to pay attention to this in future situations, because that is something I always had the trouble with, is when I think it through and then I come up with a solution or an idea or something, a talking point, it's after the incident or the situation had passed. And then I lose my opportunity to um, fix it or revisit it or rectify or whatever it may be. So that is one big problem I've always had. And oftentimes, people do not want to revisit something that has already gone by. And at least in my experience, that's been what I've faced.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think also too, it's and I'd like to. We don't need to go into the content of the conversation, but I think that as you are more present and in the conversations, well, you'll start to build more rapport and goodwill with each other, and that will cultivate the opportunity for them to be receptive when you come back around. That's why rapport and goodwill is so essential, because people will be receptive because they want to be collaborative. Human beings want to collaborate with others. They want successful collaborations, especially in the business world. It's like our family situation. It's like, wait a minute, are we all pointing at the same target? Are we all on the same side of the line? Are we all on the same team? And that's what rapport and goodwill will do. But if we don't have rapport and goodwill, they're not their ears aren't open. But what's so great is we can bring a higher quality of listening to any conversation, which is going to raise the bar of the conversation. We can't wait for other people to bring it. Especially for those conversations we want to have, we have to come in with a higher functioning capacity for conversation. And gosh, we're in contact with people every day. What a great, no shortage of opportunities to practice.
Not since 2020, and we were in lockdown, where we like everything is like virtual. We don't see anybody anymore.
But you're still having to connect, and I think it's even more important to have successful conversations when you can't be face to face. I mean,
Right.
or even
Yes.
person to person.
Right.
It's kind of like texting. So much
Right.
can be lost in a text that if you were face to face to it, I'll say
Right.
person to person contact,
Right.
you miss so much of the nuances.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
I know that I struggle a little bit with people who talk a lot.
In what way?
Well, I just start to feel like I start to feel a little agitated, and
Yeah, because they're not meeting your expectations.
yeah, and they're not shutting up.
I know. I have to be. It takes a practice to be present because I'm kind of one of those people. It's like, okay, let's start at the end. Give me the bullets. Start at the end, and if I need to know more, I'll ask questions. So it's like, wait a minute. How how much can I be present to? It's like,
Yeah. And I think it's just trying to be comfortable with myself at the moment,
there
I
you go,
guess.
there you
I guess
go.
that's pretty much what it is, right?
Yep,
You know, and
yep.
if I really have the need to get out of the conversation, I just ask for that. I have to ask for that. That's
It's
all,
that simple.
you know? Yeah.
It's that
It
simple.
kindly, a nice way.
In a connected way. I'll say in a connected relational way.
Uh-huh.
Not in a they're so wackadoodle way. You know what I mean? It's like, wait a minute. It's like, and when I had employees, I would just say, you know what, that's as much as I can really take in right now on what you've shared with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can really take in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll come back when I have capacity to hear more, because I could get clued into when I could no longer listen.
Oh, so you're normal.
Ordinary. That's why I said it gets so much easier if you just allow yourself to be ordinary, fumbling human being with insecurities, trying to figure out how to connect. Just join the human race. We don't have to hold ourselves at a higher level than just being human.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gets so much It's so much easier. It's so much easier. And when we're sharing and we want people to hear us, the feeling we have inside us is gonna be a big factor. And like I said, if you're present to someone and not in all of that judgment assessment stuff, the feeling, like when you were just talking about that client, you gave
Mm-hmm.
them your attention. There's a
Mm-hmm.
different feeling to that versus how long is this going to go on? I knew if she doesn't use punctuation, I'm going to lose my mind. La la la.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? At that moment, I shifted to putting all of my attention and awareness on my thoughts about this person, and I left the conversation.
Well, I was going to bail. And the way I was going to do it was I was going to say, sorry, I didn't purchase these blinds. I didn't, these are not my blinds. Like, call the company, but he didn't like that company anymore, so I was just trying to be attentive to what he wanted, which wasn't what I wanted. And, that did the trick, for getting a rapport
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
him. And I'm really truly not used to getting rapports with really high end customers, honestly. Like, it's not that I sabotage them, but I am nervous with them. I have, because I don't feel on the same plane. And I know, and so I think that this, as you have said before, we're all human. And, just understanding that and letting it be like that, like neutral, or just human. And I'm here to be here for you, in whatever way I can, is everything, I guess. It's helps a lot for me not to
Exactly.
feel nervous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It happens so often that someone's title, say in the workplace, someone's title evokes a kind of destabilizes us. It's like, okay, I'm going to be sitting down with the chairman of the board. They want my opinion on something. Here I go into my review. This person is going to be signing off on whether, I get the bonus, I don't get the bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can see that all of that really can stir up, and like you just said, a high-end client, for whatever reason, it just stirs up a lot of dust in your head, a lot of thinking. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, at that instant, it's so clear to see. It's like, wait a minute, I'm really connecting to what I've made up about their title or their position in life.
Mm.
When I can discard that and know that I'm coming in contact with a human being.
Mm.
It's like that would be what we've made up about the title, what we've made up about their position in life. That's part of that personalized commentary that we can just put to the side, knowing that I'm going to be connecting with a human being, and there's every human being on the planet wants to be seen, heard, and wants to feel a connection to someone. And then that helps your insecurities lay down. And you can listen. Do you see how all that static would just stop you from listening?
And so, and if that person uses their title or their, position in a way that is maybe demoting or derogatory, then how do you handle that?
Well, I think the best way to handle it is give up the notion that what they're saying has anything to do with you.
It has to do with them, not me.
It has everything to do with how they're seeing the situation. But if you know in the depths inside you that they're basically giving you a snapshot of their state of mind at that moment, and that has nothing to do with you, you can, that's another place of a great learning curve of listening, is like, how can I listen beyond that? And I'm not saying put yourself in harm's way or take abusive behavior or anything like that. I'm not saying that. But just how often do we take things personally? Like someone comes in the room with a scowl on their face, and we immediately make assumptions about that scowl or even their low mood, and we personalize it. That's all that gets in the way of our ability to listen. And we just can stay clear of all of that personalization about that person. And again, it's practice. Just show up and be clear-minded, knowing that there's a human being under that, and their upset is their upset. Even if they come at you and say, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do that, you give them your presence, it tends to neutralize.
Mm-hmm.
It's when we
I think not being defensive.
Exactly. When we start to explain or defend, they're still not being heard. And as human beings, they need to be heard.
Yeah.
And you want to have a productive conversation and let this situation pass through.
Right.
We want these situations to get resolved and pass through.
Right.
Resisting listening to what the person has to say constipates the whole conversation.
Right. It's like really feeding right into it, I guess.
Well, there's no, again, you've left a productive conversation.
Yeah.
You've left a productive conversation. Knowing that every single person is at their core a human being with their own insecurities, their own judgments, their own assessments.
So now I'm just going to be saying, oh, they just don't know these listening tools.
That's a good defense mechanism.
Yes, totally. But if it helps you stay in the conversation and stay centered, not get destabilized, not get thrown off, knowing that they're a human being and they're trying to be heard, you can, again, sit and listen and let this situation get resolved, pass through, find out what the next steps are. But all these situations, we don't know what the outcome's going to be. But how can I be more present? And that's going to really shift the outcome.
I'm just going to think to myself, just sit on my hands.
Now that just came to me, but you'll have your own ideas about, when you're getting that tingling or whatever it is, when all the bells and whistles are going off of get out of here or react or lash out or defend, explain.
Yeah, it really does come ahead of the conversation often.
It does.
It really does. Like my radar is already getting ready. It's getting ready. It doesn't even know what's coming.
No, but it's going to, if it's a situation where we feel insecure, it tends to start manufacturing scenarios about what's going to happen, and it goes through all the potential scenarios that it could dream up, and then we're reactive to all those scenarios. And again, we have now packed our bags and moved up into our mind, and we're not even present in the conversation that hasn't even happened yet.
And really, in the attempt to try to be secure with the mind, trying to get you to feel secure, it puts you in a position where you're even less, like, where you're even more destabilized.
Yep. 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 Because oftentimes when we're trying to listen, we're our insecure mind is grabbing words that they're saying and running it through our insecurities and saying, well, you know what this means? This means you're about to get your notice, you're about to get your pink slip. Oh my God, our mind takes words and runs it through our insecurity and gives you an outcome.
Hmm.
So if you can listen with ears open in a more grounded, centered place of being open to listen, you don't have to. What I think I call it's like getting a thought hangover. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, I ran all those scenarios, none of them happened, and I'm exhausted. Or you didn't get sleep last night because you were running all the possibilities that could go on the next day in the innocent effort of thinking you're going to be prepared, but you're really going to be exhausted because you spent all night running them through your insecurities, and you can't listen.
Oh my God.
So, we've been pointing a lot of it to about how to cultivate a clear mind when you listen. And I can't emphasize enough that it's not hard. It's not, it's what we would do naturally and effortlessly. It's not it's a skill we came in with at birth. It's not until we got really to developing of ourselves, having a busy mind or a critical thinker that all that is well and good except when it works against you. Because it's like, wait a minute, what if I could just start out being present? It takes so much less effort. And then you can be responsive to what's occurring, not to what your mind is made up about a situation.
I could see how that could really change like a personal relationship. But even one that maybe has been like entrenched in a certain pattern for a long time.
Absolutely.
And it could really be disruptive at first.
In what way?
Well, I mean, when the whole homeostasis of like a family or something is changed, like say someone, they get sober, or something like that. And then it changes the whole homeostasis of the family. And so people get on the defensive in the family. They get rocked. I mean, and I just think sometimes like just it settles out to the best.
Well,
It turns for the best.
Well, I think in that place of like disturbing the homeostasis, it does. But if you check the motivation, like the instinctual motivation and the desire to connect, there's a very loving energy in that
Yeah,
versus smelling like there's some agenda.
that's
Like
true.
like teenagers will When I work with teenagers, it never fails. It's like they're like the parents are going, "No, you can tell me everything. Just be open. Tell me everything." Now, a kid's radar goes off in a flash because they can sense that that might be the words they're using, but they're getting a gut sense of like the energy is different. It's like, yeah, no.
I remember those days.
Exactly, exactly. So it's like there's that component again of rapport and goodwill. Is like if you're clean, or you can even be transparent, going, tell you the truth, I really want this, this, and this out of the conversation. I'll just put that on the table. I'm not saying I'll get it, but I'm just going to tell you that it's this, and this. And that builds rapport and goodwill because there's no invisible agenda like I was talking about that kids get a sense of. They get the energy of it when they walk in a room. It's not just the words you use that you're bringing to a conversation. It's that, it's really the true motivation of the conversation. And we can cultivate that, knowing that we all want to feel more connected, more collaborative, live in a better feeling, feel good about other people, and have other people feel good about us, in a goodwill sense, that we're all part of the same human race. People we do have a lot of history with, even if people we don't have a whole lot of history with, but we might have a lot of, maybe it wasn't such a smooth ride with this person. We innocently bring that history to the conversation every time, innocently. We don't start the conversation from a clean place. But that's where the change happens. And when we start the conversation from a clean place, I can listen to this person with a clean place. That's where potential and possibility reside.
Yeah.
But again, it's you in this conversation, you can make a choice to take responsibility for upgrading your conversations and upgrading your listening.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing it's easier when you start to practice it and you start an opportunity to try it out, you see it's so much easier. You don't have to run ahead of all your conversations.
I would say that I started that process with someone before this workshop, but it really, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of trying to start with a blank slate. And to my surprise, it was helpful, So now it's just, it affirms it that if I continue to do that, then, that it will continue to be helpful.
It will.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It will, because you start to notice that running ahead of a conversation, wait a minute, I can take that off my mind.
It's really not easy though. I mean, especially if someone, that, you care a lot about. It's even harder, I think, because it's like, because you tend to want to take things personally. You tend to have more expectations, you tend to have more at stake, so to speak. And so I think taking that kind of just all of that, just as much as possible, clean slate, and noticing, that, oh, I'm reacting, inside. I'm feeling like I want to say something that I might regret, or whatever it is, and even if I do, I mean, it's nothing you can't take back, or, you can't say, I didn't mean to, do that, say that, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's a great practice.
It's a great practice. And it's like that rapport and goodwill that I keep mentioning again and again and again, that people will be receptive to you coming back going, you know what? I made a mess of this. I probably, went beyond where it was a successful or productive conversation. I'm a work in progress.
I think the honesty is a really important thing too,
Mm-hmm. 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 It brings it a level of calm and peace inside you. And that's who you live with.
Yeah.
That's really the person you're in a relationship with 24/7.
Just got to turn my heat off.
Okay. Okay. So, like in this place of listening with a clear mind, you're going to notice that you organically get curious about what the person's trying to share. That's one of the top tips about can you stay curious to understand or have a desire to understand what the person's trying to share. And oftentimes we are not curious. We think we know what they're saying, but you can cultivate a curiosity and find out what matters to them and what they're trying to share. Curiosity is really wanting to know the person better and what matters to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And on the list of suggestions, it's like, please stay out of indulging your interpretation about what's happening, because it invites connection when you reach out to understand. Don't drink the Kool-Aid of your interpretation, because your interpretation is going to be filtered through your own separate universe we talked about, and they live in their own separate universe. So it's like, don't interpret, invite more of a conversation. Check it out with them. What matters to them? What are you hearing? What do you don't understand? How does that look to them? That's another way of saying it. It's like, how does that look to you? Why is that important to you? You'll get to know the person. Not just have your own thinking validated, you'll get to know the person. And especially people we have history with, we think we know the person. But we are evolving beings every single day. We are evolving beings, and we'll continue to grow and evolve the rest of our life. So who is that person today? Even how you experience them, it's like, get curious about who they are today. What if you don't know them like you think you do? You're tweaking your listening, you're opening your ears to that person. I think it's
and they might be different tomorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's absolutely, because as human beings we have moods. We have moods, high moods, low moods, middle moods. And the last time we interacted with them on a particular topic, they were in a low mood. And of course, it's whatever the topic is going to look different to someone when they're in a low mood than when they're in a high mood.
Right.
It's going to look like a real problem when they're in a low mood, and it's going to look like no big deal when they're in a high mood. So none of it's set. So it's like, take the assumptions that you know this person and you know how they're going to react to something.
Or if they say something that they might change their mind, or
check in with them. Where are they on that topic today? You can get curious.
Right.
Where are they on that topic today? And not have, not make up that I can't ask them that because that always lights them up. It's like, if you come toward them on that topic with curiosity, that's going to be a different energy to your homeostasis situation. You come.
It also helps me put behind, my own prejudgment.
Exactly, which is all that agenda, which is all that
from the last conversation.
Exactly. All that meanness, that I keep talking about. Me-NESS. Oh, there's a lot of meanness, and it's like, wait a minute. If I put all of me over here on the side and put my attention on this person and be curious about this person, what can I learn about this person?
What about me?
I know. You can go back and get you. But it's like if
Mm.
if a lot of you is getting in your way of being able to build rapport, establish goodwill, be receptive to what the person is saying, and be curious about the person. Those are key elements in having real connection with another human being, regardless of their place in life or their title on their business card.
And it can be interesting.
Fascinating, especially when you think you know why somebody is doing something or you think you know what it means to them. And then you kind of dig a little deeper to try to find out, well, why does that really matter? And they say something that is so far beyond anything that it had never crossed your mind that it would matter. You're like, you start to laugh because you're like going, man, I don't know anything, and I sure thought I did. You don't take your assumptions so seriously because I find it so fascinating. Like you can say, well, why does that matter? And they'll go, oh, on Tuesdays, I don't like to so-and-so for whatever. And you're like, what? That's it?
Never would have thought of that.
Never would have thought of that. But see, that way it's like your ears are just more open to the person and less assumption and interpretation. It's fascinating. It's like playing a game show, like what's behind door number 1, door number 2, and door number 3 is when I check in with them about, well, why does that matter to you? I can make up a whole bunch of possibilities, and then they just volunteer the information. And I love that. It's like, oh, you mean I really can't believe all the things I tell myself? It's like, why even take it on? Because you don't know.
No, you don't know.
You don't know. You don't know. But you do know, I think we all know, we all want a feeling of more connection in the world with the people we come in contact with. We want to feel more connected. I believe now more than ever. To me, it's very basic human desire.
Yeah, I think
feel
this
connection.
COVID thing, I can imagine it's either blown people apart or it's made it better for them. Like at the families, how much more important families are and everything. Yeah.
And each person is having their own unique experience of it too.
Yeah.
And what matters to them. Some people love the new normal. Some people can't stand the new normal. It's all over the place.
And yeah.
So do you have
normal?
Well, whatever you want to call it,
I know what you mean.
The operating system we live in, It's individual in that universe that we talked about. It's so individual. So any other questions or anything that's on top of your mind about listening that you could have a curiosity about?
I would like the opportunity to try to apply everything since I didn't have that from last week, but for me, this is especially relevant for my relationship with my boyfriend because I think we have sometimes we have broken communication lines, it's like playing telephone, like I say something, he hears something else and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot about also projecting what's in your head onto the other person. I mean, everything you said today and from what I heard, I do see that. And I was aware of it, but now you guys confirmed it even more. But I would like to see how that applies going forward from this week to, I think there's another session next week with you, Cherie.
No, it was last week and this week.
It was 2 sessions. Oh, okay. I understood there was another session. I don't know why. Okay, so I would like to give that a shot and see how that works, because I know I suffer from this thing, the communication thing, the listening and hearing and also being heard. So I'll try to give him this information too and see how he reacts to that and how he evolves or adjusts.
That's a great idea. I mean, that's a great idea because you could have a conversation on this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
You know,
here's the
you know
handout.
when you said about trying to find the first exit to like bolt out of a conversation,
Uh-huh.
he, I sense that he's like that when we are in a difficult conversation. I'm more about, okay, let's face it, let's deal with it, do the surgery and get out. He's like, no, let's get out first, and then we'll come back to this. So,
Well, this is a suggestion. So it's like, say you use this as neutral. Practice with a neutral topic.
practice with a neutral topic.
Like this list of things,
Yeah.
like if you approach and go, I really like to hear and listen better. Do it all for you. It's like, I really want to understand you better. I really want to know you better. And this thing came across my list, and I can we just talk about this? And it's like, keep it neutral. You see? Just to explore. So you can say, even in that place of like, do you think, what do you think being present to somebody is? This is what I think it is. Just have a very neutral conversation and just try to understand what being present to him might mean.
Right.
And so you keep it no harm, no foul. You're just doing an exploratory conversation, neutral between two people. And that way you can kind of strengthen your muscles on just having a neutral conversation and being curious about the person and getting to know how they see things.
I'm just saying, like, what's for dinner? Like something neutral.
Exactly, something completely neutral. And then, you get comfortable with trying to be curious, build rapport and goodwill, and just be curious about how they see things. This is a great little cheat sheet of just having conversation. And we don't have to do brain surgery on the first conversation. 0 to brain surgery. It's like, no, it's the first day of med school. Let's just do
pre-K.
Pre-K, exactly. Let's just do pre-K and put the foundation in place before we try to script a challenging conversation. Because we need to get onto ourselves before we have expectations of others.
Yes. Yeah, I think, one thing I think I have experienced with my communication problems with people, hearing or being heard, is like what you just said, is like being on the same page when you're having a conversation versus one being here and one being here. Like kind of like setting the stage for the conversation, if that makes if that's along the line of what you're advocating, or if that goes against it, I don't know. But it's like kind of having an expectation of what to expect or what to have other to expect of you.
Do you mean like the topic?
Oh. I'm sorry?
I was just wondering, do you mean like the topic of the conversation?
More about like the, like what Cheryl just said, like, what does this mean to you? So maybe what, for example, an apple means to him is something different from what it means to me. So kind of like getting to know what each other's understanding of a certain thing is will help get you to a medium ground. So then you can take the conversation gradually from there.
Right, because I would say that part is establishing the goodwill and some rapport. Setting the stage in another way that we unproductively set the stage
Yeah.
is when we cast the characters and we assume the roles are going to play in the conversation. That would be setting the stage, kind of typecasting the
Mm-hmm.
conversation versus letting it be a clear conversation and not set the stage.
Okay. So setting the stage goes counterproductive to what you were saying.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Setting the stage is would be the equivalent of having an agenda or
Having an
even
okay, okay.
or even forecasting into the
Projecting onto
future. Yeah.
someone. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Forecasting how this is going to play and how people are going to show up in this conversation.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to say is like to explain my point of view. Okay, so for example, an apple means da 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 to me. So let's talk about an apple. For example, that's more of what I was thinking is like explaining more than projecting what explaining myself to the other rather than self explaining the other person in my head.
Great. Great. I can address that. I can address that. So, like, if you're wanting to share something about yourself or your point of view or something, or
Mm-hmm.
your why something matters to you, okay. Step one is checking in to see if they're receptive to what you
Right.
want to share.
And how do you do that?
Check in with them. Say, you know what, I would love to share with you how I see some things, and you know, are you in a place where you can listen? Are you in a place where you're interested, or
or you want to watch football. Okay.
well, it's just like this is important for me, and I'd like for you to know me better.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to know if there's a time where you might be available and if you're receptive to hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
That's good. Mm-hmm.
and what can be so helpful is if they're not receptive to hearing it, why waste your breath?
Yes, exactly.
if
Why
they
fight your way to explain yourself? Right.
exactly because receptivity is we can cultivate receptivity if they're willing, but it's good to really establish receptivity before you just uh, start to share. Again, that's where the efficiency comes in. A conversation can be much more efficient if we are checking for receptivity. Is now a good time? Do you have
That's a good idea because usually, sometimes I try to sneak in my agenda, like you said, and like be faced with the brick wall.
right, right, because they
Have an
can
argument about why we're having the conversation versus having the conversation itself.
exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
and to even when they say, you know what, I'm not in a place where I'm really can hear that right now, you're like, cool, I'll approach you again. Don't take it personally. Don't add meaning to why they're not receptive at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to check in with them and say, you know what, I'll circle back by. Or if you find a time when you're receptive, you let me know. But I'll definitely bring it back up because I would love to have this conversation. If now's not a good time, great. If you if if you think you're never going to be interested in it, great. And if you think now's just not a good time, I'll circle back around.
Okay. That's good. That's very helpful.
Receptivity, rapport, goodwill, it all is like a magnetic, like it, it's magnetic between people, you know? Rapport, goodwill, receptivity is like it draws people closer if the environment is really conducive to those three things. Any other questions, anything? We're about wrapping up, so I just want to check to see if there's any other top of mind questions. No. Well, I thank you guys so much for showing up, and you brought such a rich conversation to the topic, and I appreciate it very much. Here are some tips to help you in your practice of becoming a better listener. Practice being present to the person you're connecting with. Practicing presence will establish a strong foundation for connecting. When we're present, our presence to the person we're connecting with will do a lot of the heavy lifting. When you're entering a conversation, go into the conversation with a clear mind. It's like coming to the conversation with a clear canvas. Don't paint a picture of the conversation ahead of time. Why? Because you cannot know how the conversation is going to go, and you want to be free and clear-minded of any agenda. You really want to take the opportunity to listen for something fresh. Listen for something you don't know. Fresh ideas and solutions come to the conversation with a clear and quiet mind. When you come to a conversation with a clear and quiet mind, you can listen at a deeper level. You can learn to listen beyond the words the person is speaking. You can learn to listen to what they're bringing their energy to in the conversation. It's so much more than just listening for words. It's for listening to the feeling behind the words. Listening with a clear mind also creates space and invites the other person the opportunity to listen to their own wisdom. And one of the most valuable tips on listening is knowing that we cannot listen when we are speaking or trying to fulfill our agenda, convince, or defend. And I would say that the final point I'd like to make is get and stay curious when you're listening. What are they trying to convey? What is the feeling behind what they're saying? Why does this matter to them? Find out. Never interpret their words with your mind. Ask the person directly for verification. This is a short list of tips that I hope will improve your listening and even invite you to be more curious about the benefits of being a better listener. Efficiency is one of the greatest benefits of better listening. My name is Cherie Ray. I am a coach and consultant, and eliminating struggle from your life is what I love to do.